Then if you want to say, why was the regiment disbanded, then I don't have an answer for you, right? If I'm not answering to say truthfully about the drug. If you were to try to come up with another answer to it, you're not doing justice, right? So there's no point to answer that question.
What does it mean to serve your country? What kind of person does it take to serve their country? What's the value of that service? And what happens to that person afterwards? I'm joined today by Sergeant Mike Rood, retired of the Canadian Army, who served 3 tours overseas, including in Afghanistan, Bosnia, and Somalia. Let's start with the easy question. Who are you?
Mike Rood, I grew up in Kalmar and Roseland, Alberta. Got in from high school, right? But say when I was 12 years old, I wrote to the recruiting center to find out what it took to join. And once I seen it, then I said, that's the only thing, that's what I want to do. So grade 10 education is all you needed. Finished it off and then went and joined the military and got in, graduated in June, say, and was in the military in January.
What made you want to pursue a career in the armed forces?
Because even then, maybe, is because I looked at it as family. And maybe somewhat unknowingly, or to think, right, to protect others. From the time I was 10, right, say that's all I wanted to do, join the Army. We lived out in Roseland. It was like a half an hour from Camrose. I think that's where they had cadets or something. We didn't have a lot of money growing up from the time that I was, say, 10 or 12. Our dad left. It was just me and my brother and my mom, right? We had no money to drive a half an hour into town every weekend. I still have a few of the letters that I sent to my mom when I joined the Army, and it was like, here Mom, I enclosed $200. I think I was getting, when I first got in the military, it was like $250 a month or something that I got paid. So I would send that home to my mom for her and my brother.
You were always stepping up. You were always the guy who was going up to the plate and doing what needed to be done, even well before your time to do that. So that would probably be a good precursor to how you ended up in we'll say, a leadership role in the Canadian Army, especially in Afghanistan, where you were a sergeant, which is a leader. We'll get into that and how that works, but it seems like very early, the stepping stones for you were you had to fill a role that were 5 times bigger than the shoes you were wearing from the get-go.
So my brother's 4 years younger than me, right? So it was me and him and my mom, and kind of like, they're coming to repossess the truck. So let's change the tires out and put shitty tires on the truck. That was me changing the tires out. I broke my hand in Cornwallis, going through Cornwallis, my ankle or whatever, playing floor hockey. Right, and I got sent home like on medical leave or whatever, right, until my ankle healed to come back for training. And so I went home for a while, and I had all of a month of Army time, and then I went back there. When I went out to do my infantry training in Wainwright, Alberta, the course that I was with was supposed to get posted then to Victoria with the 3rd Battalion, Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry.
What year was that?
So that was 1988. Went to battle school in May or June or something like that, right? I got in, signed the dotted line on my sister Roxanne's birthday on the 21st of January, 1988. So we kind of forgot about her birthday, because we all went to the recruiting center and I did my oath of allegiance. So then I went to Wainwright to my battle school, but instead of getting posted to Victoria, I wanted to be close to my mom, so I asked to be compassionately posted to Calgary. So that way I was only like a 2-hour drive from home, and I'd go home on the weekends. Even to say, when I was in battle school, I'd be driving cross-country along the cross-country roads to go home and visit my mom on the weekend or whatever, like drive, for the weekends we might have got off, or where I didn't want to go party with everybody, right? So like going through, I think by Sedgwick, Alberta, it'd be like going on a road and the road turns, and then it was just kind of like a farmer's road, like through a field. And then I'd just hit that, follow the farmer's thing, and then hit a gravel road on the other side again, because it cut like 10 minutes off the road or whatever, right? It was kind of the routes you kind of knew, because I grew up in that area.
And what are some memorable moments that you had at basic training? Anything to do with maybe your bedding or something like that?
Well, more so in battle school, right? You know, I used a can or two of starch with all the hospital corners and, you know, the top of the bed to make it all crisp, right?
Yeah.
And then I would sleep under the bed and then...
You wouldn't sleep on the bed?
No, sleep on the floor, under the bed.
Keep the bed fresh.
Yeah. And, you know, obviously not a very comfortable sleep, but then I was up at 4:30 in the morning anyways, because my job was to do the, like doing the waxing, right? I had the machine.
Yeah.
So I'd be waxing at 4:30 in the morning, because like every morning we were waxed the floor. Everything had to be perfect, right?
You mentioned that at battle school, you used to have to make hospital corners and that you would sleep on the floor. But I think there's more to that story. Did that go on forever? Were you able to keep doing that?
No, I got busted or whatever, and then I had to, then they had me crawl into my bed, and then Buddy gave me like drill commands as I was in my bed, right? Right turn, left turn, about turn, and doing all this in your bed to mess it up, and then, you know, then I learned my lesson.
Make it nice and use it.
Yeah. We couldn't do nothing when you first get in, right? You just had to buy your starch. You know, for ironing, buy an iron,
Keeping the bed.
whatever, all that jazz. You could go to the mess. I went to the mess once and drank or whatever. But when you had to dress up in your dress clothes, and the bottom of my shoes got pitted with all the rocks and stuff. And I was like, well, I ain't going back there. So then that was it. I think when I got weekends off, I would take the train from Cornwallis, because the train used to run, and I would take it to my sister Roxanne's friend who had moved back home to Nova Scotia, and I'd go stay there a few weekends. And then I would sit there on the weekend and play backgammon. Yeah. So we played that every weekend. I'd play that with her.
Some people might be hearing some chewing in the background right now, and those are your two service dogs. We'll talk about them a little bit later and talk about the importance of service dogs for veterans like yourself. There's Spark over there, and there's also Phoenix, who's the newest addition. Phoenix is going for specialized training in a short while, I believe at Baden K9, correct?
Yes.
Before we move on to the next part of your career, when you were growing up, what was your impression of Canada? What did you think of Canada?
That's actually a pretty good question. Because the thing that something that that's kind of captured in my mind, I went to Cornwallis and you get issued your kit, right? So it's all generic because you're right now, it's basic training, right? So everybody's going through with it on your slip-on, right? It would have, say, once I joined and I went through battle school and I passed my inspection and was allowed to wear a cap badge, a PPCLI cap badge. Prior to that was earning your cap badge, the Cornwallis cornflake, they'd call it. So that was like a test in week 10 or something of basic training. And you had to have all your ducks in a row and all your kit had to be perfect. Once you passed, you got presented your Cornwallis cornflake and you wore that. You had a slip-on, so the first one you had then had Canada. There was no rank because you're just a basic private. You don't even get a chevron. When we were marching, right, and you're brand new, and I would look and see the epaulet that said Canada and think to myself, man, I'm like, you know, kind of the chest go out and it's like, I'm so proud that I'm serving my country, right? There's no greater thing you can do for your country than to die for it, right?
Yeah. After battle school, how did things go for you? What was the next few years of your career like? So this was 1988. What happened?
Yeah, so I got there in the fall into battalion, joined the battalion in the fall of '88, 1st Battalion, Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry. I went to Bravo Company, and I was only there about like a year and a half all told, maybe. Went to RV-89 with the 1st Battalion, like a big exercise in Wainwright. It would be the entire Army of Canada would go to Wainwright and do an RV. So that was where they brought the whole Army together. Plus then Americans and others would come up. When I went to go on my jump course, they told me if you do your jump course, you're gonna go to the Canadian Airborne Regiment. And then I said, yeah, that's what I want that. I want to get posted out east because I was with the French lady then. She was from Rimouski, Quebec, so then it was handy for us to go there, right?
Is that where the Canadian Airborne Regiment was?
Was in Petawawa, Ontario. So then it was well, for her to go home, then it was a 8-hour drive, 9-hour drive. Petawawa was a small town and stuff, so there wasn't much for work for her.
What kind of things were you doing for that year when you were in 1st Battalion?
I went and I did my Armored Vehicle General Purpose course, how to drive one of those, which then I used later when I went to Somalia with the Airborne Regiment. I got like a BV-206 course. It was a over snow vehicle, like the big two, like a cab and a trailer. They use each other to turn through hydraulics, right? And then I went on an exercise in Norway in 1990, like in February 90. Before I did my jump course and before I went to the Airborne, did an exercise over there, part of the ACE Mobile Force, which was Allied Command Europe Mobile Force.
What was your favorite memory from that exercise?
We had Brits were the enemy force, British Army. We were by our tents, and I seen one of them, and he was on his skis or whatever. So it was like, whatever, it was all out like, we're gonna catch you, motherfucker, right? But me and another guy were running through. I didn't have snowshoes, or I wasn't in snowshoes or whatever, so I didn't get very far, and then he got away. We were trying to get him. He was enemy force, right? And it was kind of. Actually, I think because I muckled onto his skis, and we almost stopped him, and then he slipped out.
Shortly after your time in 1st Battalion PPCLI, you did your jump course and you joined the Canadian Airborne Regiment. Yeah. What did you do there?
When I first got there, I said, why'd I fucking come here? I say that because the physical fitness, the physical training that we did in the 1st Battalion was difficult because fresh to the army, new to the Army, new to working out, new to all that kind of. But then when I went to the Airborne Regiment, the runs in the morning were like, how long, right? They were like an hour that would go for a run, like running, and not just a slow run, like a fast run. We're into it, and I'm like, my God, why'd I come here? Right? And then after PT was over, it'd be like, well, that wasn't so bad.
Till tomorrow.
But then at supper time, I'd be like, oh man, PT tomorrow. Why'd I come here? Oh my God. Like every night, I was like, oh man, I don't want to do PT tomorrow. Man, this is so... My first year there, we would do like, we're going to the range to shoot today. So we would shuffle and jog with our full gear 10 miles to the range and shoot. One time, they had a truck for us to ride back, but our platoon commander made the truck follow us. And we ran back. The next day or 2 days later, we were doing a run down by the river. This is like November. So we did an exercise where you pass the person over your head. And when the platoon commander got to the middle of the pile, we then took him, and a group of us took him out and threw him into the water, into the river. It was like 2 degrees out or something, and said, that's for making us run back. And then we didn't run by the river for a while either.
Yeah, he was worried about that.
Yeah. Nobody got in trouble. We just didn't run by the river no more for a while.
You're doing brutal physical training, and to the breaking point, every day you're at the point where you're like, why am I here? But every day, the next day
you do it, and because you find a way to, because you just do it. Say when I did my jump course, I fell out of one of the runs, right? I fell back maybe 20 feet or probably further then because I wasn't mentally stronger then. Then they called me into the office when we finished the run, and I went and seen the adjutant and told, if you fall out of a run one more time, you're getting returned to unit. You're done, finished, gone. The run in the morning was difficult. We did a run in the afternoon that was, I'd say, 5 times harder than the one in the morning, and I had no problem. Because inside it was like, if you fall out, you're kicked off course. I will not be kicked off course. When I did the run and I realized it's that we're weak mentally. In your mind you say, no, I can't go any further. I can't do it. But your body, in reality, can keep going longer than your mind can. If you can defeat your mind defeating you, then you got it, right?
All of these runs really gave you a very specific mental toughness. They did what they were designed to do. They made you into a disciplined machine that can persevere through pain and achieve the mission. And clearly it worked. Walk me through the early 1990s in the Canadian Airborne Regiment.
When I got to the Airborne, it was the attitude of, we can accomplish anything.
For people who are wondering what the Airborne Regiment was, how would you compare it to other nations? Like in the United States, for example, they have U.S. Army Rangers. Where would you place it in terms of other countries?
We were replaced then by the Canadian Special Operations Regiment, CSOR. Back in the day then, referred to then as Special Forces, or that is how they explain it, and say the Canadian Airborne Regiment has a lineage to the 1st Special Service Force, which was a joint Canadian-American unit made up of commandos that went behind enemy lines. They took places that no regular Army units could take it. They took Mount Defensa and scaled the mountain from behind. That's the things that the Airborne Regiment would do. Say with Chinook helicopters, we inserted with assault boats. The helicopter sitting its arse in the water, pushing out with our assault boats, helicopter take off and would go ashore and do our things. At the time, that was the unit that if you wanted to be all you could be, that's where you went. And then on top of that, it was, say, be a Pathfinder. There'd be 30 people would start that course, and they might have 3 people finish.
The Pathfinder.
Yeah, that passed. Those guys were like the...
This was before the days of Joint Task Force 2, right?
A lot of people from the Airborne Regiment and Pathfinders, right? They all went to JTF2.
And in the early 90s, the Canadian Airborne Regiment had a few deployments, at least one that I can think of off the top of my head.
So we went to Somalia in 92 to 93. I got there, I left Canada December 26th, 92, and I came back in June.
What were your missions in general when you were there? What were you focused on doing in Somalia?
It was supposed to be a humanitarian mission was really what everybody went there for, because people were starving. One time we escorted some aid workers out to repair a well, drove through a minefield to get there. That one's kind of a mixed feelings one, because in reality then, as an airborne person and there, I would have said, no, we got to keep going. Mission before self. After Afghanistan, I'm like, no man. In Afghanistan, had we done that, you'd be on a plane charged and on a plane ride home. When I was in the 1st Battalion and you're learning about driving, where I learned to drive the AVGP, they taught us how to drive through a hasty minefield, and that's all it was, right? So that's what we drove through. They just throw the mines on top of the ground, right? Scatter them all out, and that's it. They're not burying them. They're just trying to slow you down enough.
What did the average day in Somalia for you look like? What were you doing on the average day?
Every day it'd be up at 6. If we had a mission or something, like the roads weren't that good, it took you a long time. Like say, I don't know, I'm thinking it took us, when we first went from Mogadishu out to Beledweyne, I'm thinking it's only like 250 kilometers or something short. The potholes are horrible. I don't think we were doing more than 20 kilometers an hour from Mogadishu to Beledweyne, right? Because the road was that bad. And not so much in our armored vehicles, it was like the 5-quarter trucks that we had hauling stuff, right? The whole road was potholes. Road moves like that, or you're going across a desert, you'd be whatever. Like I said, you're up at 6, go till nighttime. Start of the tour, it'd be cold at night. It could be cold, like you might have frost on the vehicle. And then the next day it'd be 35.
And what kind of vehicle were you driving most days?
Armored vehicle, general purpose. So it was like an armored vehicle with 6 wheels. It was the predecessor to the Bison and the Lav. The Lav is your modern day. Ours was one that could only take, say, 50 cal rounds maybe. It had a 50 cal machine gun in the turret along with the 30 cal machine gun called the old C5, which is like our modern C6, but was an older type one. And then I was in a direct fire support platoon. In our 3-man detachment, that was our vehicle with a 50 and a C5 in the turret, the 30 cal. And then in the back, we had another 50 cal machine gun with a tripod to be able to dismount that gun and fire it in that manner. In addition, we had an 84 millimeter rocket launcher, Carl Gustav, and then some M72s in the vehicle too, like the smaller anti-tank 66 millimeter.
So the average day for you go out, do a mission, come back kind of thing?
Yeah, or we might go out for 3 days. We went to the Ethiopian border one time, kind of by where we went to the minefield. When we went to the border there, the armored guys were in another town called Madabon. So that was closer to the border, and near the border there, in the mountain, they'd have trenches cut in the rock and everything for them to fight from, the Somalis to fight the Ethiopians, right? When they had a war between the two there. And that's even where we did emptied all our ammunition was on like an old tank battlefield where there's 3 tanks, and we just let loose and fired used up all our ammo because we were going back to Canada. There was nobody coming to replace us, so they had us fire off most of the ammo, and we just went nuts.
That must have been fun.
Yeah. We just went out there, and it was like a bunch of cowboys letting loose on a Friday night or something, right? Yeah, so when we left, we were supposed to go there in a peacekeeping mission. Before we went, the U.S. went in, the Navy SEALs went in, and it then became a peacemaking mission. The article changed under the UN. We arrived, our vehicles took a month to go by sea. We received white UN vehicles in Somalia, and now we're peacemaking. So what we would do is take like a little wash basin, fill it with water and mud, and make mud, and coat our white vehicle and make it desert cam with desert sand.
Where did you spend most of your time in Somalia?
In Beledweyne, which was the 250 kilometers inland or something, yeah. I'm probably way off, but who knows.
And the main mission was to protect aid workers, stuff like that, right?
Yeah, it was supposed to be like that, and peacemaking, keep the warlords and stuff. There was 2 or 3 different warlords in there.
Were you doing law enforcement?
2 Commando was doing it in the town where they were trying to train a police force, right? So they also had some SF guys inserted with them, American Special Forces.
What was your best day in Somalia?
That's a tough call. I'm not sure. Funnest time, or kind of cool time. Somalia has some of the best beaches in the world, apparently, but it also has some of the most shark-infested waters. It's said in all our books, don't go swimming. It's full of sharks. But then you know, it's 35 degrees out, and you look out on the water and you see people swimming, and then you're like, man, I want to go swimming. So then we went swimming. We're like big chickens. There was kind of a ledge, and would jump off the ledge and then swim this way and then up on the ledge again. And then once we got brave enough, then we'd actually swim out and you'd kind of like body surf coming back in, except it was all like sharp, jagged coral when you kind of came in. And I remember one time we kind of jumped in, and my friend jumped in after me, and his hand touched the back of my leg or something, so I come up like yelling, "Shark!" So then he comes up, then he's like, he hears me yelling shark, so then he's yelling it. Right? It was him. Right.
So you had good friends in Somalia. You made some really good friends.
Oh, we had great guys that I served with, top notch, right? Best guys.
You still friends with a lot of them?
Oh, yeah. But so towards the end of the tour, an aid worker was swimming, and she lost, shark took her leg off. 4 Canadian Airborne Regiment guys jumped in the water after a shark just bit a lady's leg off. They swam out with an inner tube and brought her back. But those guys all earned the Medal of Bravery, right, for what they did. Paul Springer, I think Ashton, Farquhar, and I probably got it all wrong because I'm just only thinking of it now. But they went in and they saved that lady. And my friend Paul Springer, right, he was one of them, right? He also got a mention in dispatches for defending an aid station, some of the quality of the people that were serving there. Nobody replaced us in Somalia, so we fired all our ammo off before we left. We only kept a combat load.
What's a combat load?
That's a very good question. I thought you might ask something like that. Damn you. No. Like, I can't remember what the combat load was for the vehicle.
But what's the idea of a combat load? What does it mean?
Ammo that you would have on you to fight a battle. Our personal line of ammo might be 250 rounds of 5.56 that we'll carry. So we'll have 5 mags of 150 rounds, and then 2 boxes of ammo in a pouch to fill 2 mags after. It might all change, and it changes with the mission. And for each mission, we had different open fire policies, right? We had different rules of engagement. That's ROEs, and that's what says, okay, if John is pointing a camera at me, then I can fire a warning shot and say, do not point that camera at me. I don't want to be videotaped. If you fail to listen to me, this is taking things to the extreme, obviously, right? But I mean, that's how it would be, right? You would have rules on how you can engage. So are they shooting at me? Are they a threat? Are they this? Are they that, right? When you're not fighting a conventional army. Like, you know, you're not fighting the Germans, you're not fighting the Japanese, you're fighting more a guerrilla war, right? Well, in Somalia, we didn't know who was who. Nobody wore a uniform other than whoever the kind of police kind of wore uniforms, kind of. Different foe, different weapon systems.
One thing I want to touch on before moving to the next part is the mefloquine, because I know this is a very serious and complicated issue. You guys were given an anti-malaria medication to go to Somalia.
Yep.
You've spent a lot of time over the last number of years in the Rude Awakening tour raising awareness about mefloquine. So could you just give me a quick summary? What is mefloquine?
Mefloquine was an anti-malarial drug that when we went to Somalia, we took it actually as part of a drug trial, which we didn't know of. People were taking the drug and were having side effects of which they should have stopped taking the drug, but then were told to keep taking the drug. We took it as part of a drug trial, which then kind of led to that drug being fully passed to market, and then went out and was available and was sent out by the millions. And all that led to a black box label later in 2015, somewhere around there, when they formed like an international mefloquine alliance. John Dow, along with other mefloquine advocates from other countries, I think like a guy from Australia, I think maybe Dave Remington from the UK. From there, they made the drug a black box label, which means it's a drug of last resort.
That's a little comfort to you guys because, as you say, this drug had a lot of side effects, and we'll leave it at that. But it had a lot of side effects. It still does.
Yeah.
And that's a price of service, because here you are, a Canadian Army soldier, and you're told take this, and you have no recourse.
Yeah. So I took it. I did what we were told, right? Because I didn't want to lose my tour. I didn't want to not go. And they told us if we didn't take the drug, they'd send us home. It's like practicing for a game that when you finally get to play it, they're going to tell you to go home because you didn't take it. It's like, and I was petrified to say, I don't want to get sick. I don't want to get sent home. I don't want to miss this mission. But I think taking the pill was worse than actually, I mean, malaria is bad, right? I know guys got it. You can die from it. Yeah, the guys that were taking mefloquine ended up catching malaria and getting sent to the ship and getting put in a bathtub full of ice trying to bring their temperature down. And then you can take mefloquine and it can mess you up, right? Worse, I think. I don't know the numbers of people that got malaria in Afghanistan or in Somalia when we did the trial. Like personally, I think there was at least 3 people that I know of that got malaria while we took that drug. And then, man, to have the side effects of mefloquine and to possibly have reoccurring malaria would be, that would be horrible.
What was your life like when you got back to Canada?
I got back at the end of June. I think it was October 3rd, they had Black Hawk Down, where helicopters went down. They were going after General Adid, and they got into it, and Americans were killed. Americans were dragged through the streets of Somalia. I saw this on the news and was like livid. And then wanting to be back there, that was really hard to watch afterwards, right? And to see that go on and to want to be back there to help.
When you got back home from Somalia, you saw the Black Hawk Down incident with the Americans who lost their lives, and of course, Medals of Honor for at least 2 of them.
There was 2 snipers that got out to defend the helicopter crew.
That crashed.
And
the pilot, I think he lived, right?
Durant.
They were making videos of him, like the Somalis. They were making videos of him as like propaganda missions, and they tried to make him say all this stuff, and terrible. That made you angry as someone who had just been in theater.
Yeah.
So, did your view of the world change after you came home from Somalia? Because this was your first time in hostile territory. Did the rose-colored glasses, which you never really kind of had maybe, did they come off?
It was a country that wasn't like ours, right, at all. So things were backwards, if you would, in our view. Say like we would decide, oh, we're going to set up a vehicle checkpoint today, and we would stop traffic, and then we would stop a vehicle, search the vehicle, have them unload the bags of grain, and in some ways, we would find the one weapon they had to protect themselves with, we would take it, taking their security away. The one weapon that they had on board their truck wasn't going to be a weapon that was really going to threaten us, the one weapon. But we took it. That was to protect their vehicle and protect their the grain somewhat. I reflected on this afterwards, right? When I watched the Surviving Black Hawk Down, and they talked about the UN troops doing just that, taking away an NGO's weapon that he would protect his car with, so that nobody would steal it. Their people would have a weapon to protect them, but then the army just says, "Oh, you got a gun, we're going to take that." Boom, right? And we were counterproductive. By watching Surviving Black Hawk Down, I said to myself, we were taking their weapons. I did. You see it a bit different when you're there.
But immediately coming home, did you have a dramatic world view change? Did you see the world a little bit meaner, a little bit crueler, a little bit?
What we have here is nothing in things that can go wrong. You go to a third world country like we did, going to Somalia, which was probably more than a third world country, right? They still don't have a government, I don't think. So all that time, they've had no government, all this, and it truly is, it's lawless.
Strongest guy runs the show.
Strongest one survives. Give an example, I gave candies to a kid near the Ethiopian border, and the one bigger kid, like an 8-year-old, took the candy from the 6-year-old. That's how they do it, right? Well, I'll just take it to you because I'm stronger. They still have the pirating off the coast of Somalia, right? Ships gotta put wire around their ship and everything because the Somalis took over ships.
You said that what we have here in terms of things that can go wrong is nothing compared to that. And it's because of things like our history and people like you and our values and everything else that we are this way. It's not the normal way of the world. Like you said, you go to somewhere like Somalia or Ethiopia and you see how cruel it is.
Say even Afghanistan. In that society, there's no help for people. You got to solve all your own problems, your family's problems.
Just like you did when you were in basic and sending your paychecks back to your mother.
There, it's like life or death decisions, right, for people. And that was third world, and we'd go to that and come back to a first world country. Now it seems like they're moving the third world into our country and changing it into a third world somewhat. It's all rose-colored glasses here in Canada. But you go to Afghanistan, you go to Somalia, and by the religion, they don't necessarily look at things the same way we do. For the LGBTQ community, they don't view them the same, and it's not safe for them. They stick up for them over here, but it's not like that. They couldn't go to those countries and be openly LGBTQ. They can't do that in those countries.
Don't have the same values.
They're not in touch with the reality. There's a utopia, and then there's the real world.
It's a cruel world out there.
Yeah.
And you saw it.
To everybody.
Tell me a bit about Bosnia. What was that like? When did you go to Bosnia?
Like 97, I think it was.
Quite a few years later.
Yeah.
What did you do for those 4 years between Somalia and Bosnia?
Well, like I finished out my time in the Airborne Regiment in 1995. We were supposed to go to Yugoslavia with the Airborne Regiment, and then we were disbanded in January of 95. Then we weren't even part of the Army, right? Our unit was disbanded, and it was like, no matter what happens, we'll never get called out if something happens. We're not even part of a unit. We're not part of the order of battle, which led to a lot of discontent within myself,
How long
right?
were you disbanded for?
Well, we were disbanded. Like in January, they told us we were disbanded. Everybody was posted out by June or whatever, July, August, or something.
You spent like half a year without a unit.
Yeah, we spent a half a year in a unit that was just waiting. We were just punching our ticket until it was time to go home to our home battalions or home units. And it was like, you just took the life out of us. If you think there was a discipline problem then, right, there was, because why? We're not going anywhere. Nothing's going on. I'm just marking time. All we're doing is waiting to get posted. I grabbed my wife at the time, and we went home to Quebec. And we went there for 2 weeks with no leave pass. I didn't get permission. I didn't tell anybody. I just left. Went to Rimouski, Quebec, and spent 2 weeks there. And then I went back to work. And when I showed up to work and they said, "Where were you?" I'm like, "Oh, I was on leave." And they're like, "Okay." Because nobody, we were in a unit that everybody that was there was disappointed. Phoenix, Fooey. At least we're fully protected. But I loved that unit, right? That was my whole life, was that unit. And they disbanded it and took it away. We would have gone to hell and back for the country with that unit, right? And then we were disbanded over bullshit. But you know what it really all was done over? It's because of what the medication, the mefloquine, did to the people that were on it, what it caused in Somalia, what it caused on tours afterwards, what it caused during, before, and after each tour that people took mefloquine on. I'd go so far as to say I think it was all an experiment with us in the desert in Somalia. It caused, the drug caused a lot of issues and caused a lot of problems for people. All the stuff, people were hallucinating on the drug in Somalia, right? In Somalia, when we're doing a drug trial. People had negligent discharges with weapons, firing weapons off accidentally. One weapon, the guys had finished were cleaning their weapons, and Buddy fired his weapon not in a safe direction and killed his friend. That's what the drug was doing to people, and nothing was recorded, and that drug was passed as safe at the end of the tour. There was like 34 incidents during our tour, and they passed the drug. The lady that was in charge of Health Canada at the time, when they passed the drug, she resigned. So in 1998, the Fifth Estate did an episode on the airborne regiment, or on mefloquine. I forget what the title of that one was, and that one's almost impossible to find now. They did one in 98, and I remember watching it in Edmonton and saying, that's bullshit. That guy should own it. He did it. He's responsible. They're responsible. That's how I thought. I said blame the drug, right? Really? All the things that I had problems with were side effects of the drug, like diarrhea every day, insomnia, right? So I'd get up at 6 in the morning, but I probably went to bed at 2 or 3 in the morning, and I would only sleep that 2 or 3 hours. And everybody was like that. People would take the drug, have hallucinations. A sergeant from the next tent over, I come in and he's laying face down in my tent. I'm just like, one man, one kid, whatever, sort yourself in the morning, right? Sort yourself out in the morning. No, not much sympathy back then, or maybe not much sympathy on the drug. And I asked Buddy in the morning, so how you feeling? Did you get drunk last night or what? He's like, I never had a drink. He took the drug and woke up in the next tent, didn't know how he got there.
Yeah, that's a lot of stuff here. I can't use all of this. I have to be really careful about how far we go, like pharmaceutical stuff. They're big dollars.
Oh, yeah. Okay, never mind.
I want to tell your story as much as I can in a cohesive way. So I'm just letting you know right now, like there's parts of this I can't use. I'm going to keep it because it's good and it's valuable. We have to figure out how to do this. We got to do Bosnia and Afghanistan. We got to get it. So I'll ask you this part again to close that out. Why was the Canadian Airborne Regiment disbanded?
Once again, because of what happened in Somalia with the drug. And then they just found convenient excuses of other stuff. So there was hazing, whatever. Hockey teams hazed, everybody hazed, right? Big deal. It was all done over the drug. And partially, I would say, even to, whatever, because you can't use stuff, but as a cover-up, right?
I'll have to find everything that we present. We like to have citations for it. Okay, like the 3rd Regiment shut down for mefloquine. I'll have to find I can present that as your opinion, but this. Okay, we're shutting this down because people are hallucinating everywhere and stuff. I believe you. I really do. That's not what this is about. It's just like.
But I mean, then part of it. Then if you want to say why was the regiment disbanded, then I don't have a fucking answer for you, right? If I'm not answering to say truthfully about the drug.
And we'll never have enough time.
Yeah, no, we don't have to go any further. But I just mean, you can't ask me a question about the unit that I love the most, and say, and fucking shut out the part that it was the drug that fucked my unit. In my opinion, the drug is linked to a lot of the way the regiment was disbanded. That's why, if you were to try to come up with another answer to it, you're not doing justice, right? So there's no point to answer that question. It was a highly trained unit. We would do anything, whatever the fuck we were told we would do, right? Go over the wall, go over the fucking wall. Drive through a minefield, we drove through it. Not even under direct orders, you will drive through that minefield. No, we just drove through it. We did it. I complained, while we went through it, I was all upset. We drove through the minefield. But if that was our only option to get to the objective, then I would have, just like we did then. I puckered my ass and we drove through over the mine, right?
That's the kind of guy you are.
But that was, all of us had that choice. There was 3 of us in that vehicle that had to live with that choice, and we did it. We would have done anything for our country, and then our country took us out at the knees. over in aspects, what was looked at was a few bad apples, right? But there was no bad apples, really, in reality, because people reacted differently.
Like you said, there's a lot of side effects from the mefloquine, and that's something you believe heavily impacted.
Played a major role in everything that went on with the regiment, with our performance, with everything. If you don't know the effects, you don't know what you're suffering from. So like the side effects from the drug, had I read the label and it said you can have diarrhea, you can have insomnia, you can have your appetite sometimes, right? All these things, sensitivity to light, paranoia.
Not a great combination for soldiers out in the middle of a hostile area.
In a war zone, right? So my paranoia in Somalia is warranted. People are out there to kill you. Now, if you took the drug and went and sat on a beach in the Bahamas and suddenly you were paranoid, you'd be like, what's wrong with me? Why am I paranoid?
Sore thumb.
I'm sitting on a beach enjoying a Mai Tai. I'm not driving through a minefield in Somalia.
It would be hard to find the forest for the trees in that kind of situation.
Yeah.
We spoke about Somalia, and there was something quite infamous that happened in Somalia, the Somali incident. Would you like to say something about that?
Well, just to say, in retrospect, all the things that happened there, in my opinion, and in driving for the last 6 years and 720,000 kilometers and talking to all kinds of people about mefloquine, in my opinion, if we weren't taking the drug, the incident wouldn't have happened.
What was the incident?
A Somali teenager who broke into the camp was beaten to death by one of the Canadian soldiers who was on mefloquine, who was all on mefloquine. But while he was doing it, he was actively hallucinating and trying to kill spiders that were on the side of the wall of the bunker, which not many people know, that he was hallucinating the whole time.
And that was a major incident
that broke, and the Somali incident, the Somali inquiry, the Somalia affair led to Kim Campbell losing her being the prime minister. She was only in power for 3 months or something like that, and she lost it over the Somali inquiry. The Somali inquiry started, and they didn't even get to talk about the drug. They just ended it. So they never looked at if it could have been the possibility of the drug.
Common theme in our world, right? Especially we're seeing that right now too.
Yep. But, for whatever, they didn't look at the real root causes of what really happened in Somalia, and that all happened because of the drug.
And that was an incident that was used by the Army Chain of Command to disband the airborne regiment, was it?
Yeah, the Somalia thing, they used that to disband us. Maybe because they didn't want talk of what all went on. I don't know, right? But it was a bad choice.
That's really insightful, and you know what? I'm glad that you shared that. I know that's a really difficult part of your story, and this is something that you guys all had to go through, and it's part of the foundations of the Rude Awakening tour, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. Before you went to Bosnia, after the airborne was disbanded, you guys were in that waiting period. What happened after the waiting period?
They didn't know what to do with us, with the airborne regiment. Where do we send them? We didn't know where we're going. Are we getting posted to? We heard we were going to Chilliwack. And then it finally came out and they said, okay. At the time, they had 3 battalions, 1090 battalion, they called it. 10% reg force, 90% reserve. So that failed. They couldn't man a battalion. So then they stood those battalions back up. The 3rd battalion in each regiment was stood back up, and that was stood up around each of the commandos. So 1 commando went to the Vandu, stood up 3 Vandu. 3 commando went back to the RCRs, and they formed 3 RCR, and 2 commando went to Edmonton and formed 3 PPCLI.
Which is where you ended up.
Yeah. What they essentially did, though, is then create 3 airborne regiments, right? 3 airborne battalions, just by the attitude and the way we were. If they said, you can't take that, you could never attack that and take it. Oh yeah, we'll show you, right? Think that kind of attitude, and that attitude is in each of those battalions now. So that, if anything, the golden egg or whatever that was laid from a mess from the airborne regiment was three battalions that became like airborne. Whether you had a jump course or not, it was like, oh yeah, fuck you. You want to go? Let's go. The same airborne attitude.
How'd that go in Bosnia? What was it like in Bosnia?
It was there wasn't much going on really then, like the Medak pocket guys and all that. Still a lot of threat of mines, buried mines in places all over the place. There was tense moments, like other sections were in like standoffs with some of the civilians at times with weapons.
What did the average day look like for you in Bosnia?
You know, we would patrol around, we'd go through a town and maybe stop at the town, go have a coffee at the restaurant or have lunch at the restaurant with your C7 and stuff at the table.
Did you make any good friends at any restaurants?
Oh yeah, like Buffet Centaur was a restaurant that would go to that I can't remember what town it was. It was outside of Velika Kladuza.
Say that 3 times fast.
Yeah. So it was VK. That was the abbreviation, right?
VK, that's the easy way.
But we would go out there and would have lunch, and the owner would sit down with us, and we got along with these people. We got T-shirts. They ordered us up T-shirts. Everybody in our platoon got Buffet Centaur T-shirts and blah, 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 right? So we had all these when we came home. And
how would you compare the environment in Bosnia to Somalia? Like the people, the society, what was the differences?
In Somalia, they didn't have anything to offer you. But in Bosnia, a farmer said, hey, would you like a beer? Let me go get a beer or something. So he's like, just wait here or whatever. And he took off on his tractor and drove 10 minutes down the road to the store and bought like a 6-pack or something and came back to give us a beer. And we sat and had a beer with him, or they'd invite you in and do you want, setting up a radio rebroadcast where you're extending the range of a radio that's further out to be able to reach back to base. So you'd go out further, set up that radio rebroadcast, and it would pass through. So then talking to the locals, and that's where I think we went back and visited them like 2 or 3 times.
Much more relaxed atmosphere in Bosnia than Somalia?
Yeah, and Somalia, like I don't know, like I wouldn't trust any going through Mogadishu, right? I don't really out in the smaller towns, maybe talking to some people, and it was just a whole different. It wasn't even like we joked around with kids and stuff like that, and we would get them to say phrases back or something, right? Like each unit would say, 2 commando would get these Somali kids to say, 1 commando sucks, right? 3 commando might get them to say, 2 commando sucks. So you go around and the kids are, joking around, but other than that, there was no real interaction really with the locals so much, except the people that worked in our camp later. And there wasn't really no talking because there was really they got some interpreters and that, but there was complete language barrier. So we couldn't have a conversation. There was like maybe 1 per camp or something.
Yeah. Like you said, it's a land with no government, a lot of warlords in Somalia, a lot of conflict and no stability. Like you said, it's a real difference. Like every decision over there is kind of life or death. And in Bosnia, like it was bad, right? But it was different though.
Ethnically, between Muslim and Christian, or I don't know. Then even say we were visiting a farmer, the man was Muslim and the woman might have been Catholic or something when they married. So he was Muslim and she wasn't. However, they're like, before we all got along, but now we're fighting amongst each other.
Was there a lot of destruction? Were a lot of the buildings destroyed?
Yeah, buildings were destroyed.
Was there like a lot of artillery battles going on there and stuff before you guys got there? Or?
Yeah, there was stuff like that. So there was homes that had the walls blown out. So we did a project in this one town to bring stuff to this family, and we brought food and stuff to help kind of fix up their house maybe or something.
So this was a peacekeeping mission, not a peacemaking mission. White vehicles? No mud?
Well, we had no mud, no. But I think we were S4, stabilization force, and I'll come to like Article 5 or whatever it is under the UN mandate.
I have to ask you about this for each deployment. What was your best day in Bosnia?
I don't know, like we got friends with the Czech Republic helicopter pilots. We organized a hockey game with them, so we played floor hockey against them and we beat them like 7-3 or something. And then we played soccer against them and then they beat us 7-3.
There you go.
Right, so it was even. We kind of got together and partied afterwards, not really official, right, because you weren't supposed to.
Right.
But we had quite a party, and Buddy was wearing a Czech Republic jacket and, stumbling back into our part of the compound. Not to really share that with my old chain of command, but anyways, Yeah, we hung out with them, and then I would organize helicopter rides for the guys, for the troops. So the Czech guys would take us up, right? And they'd do it like a roller coaster, right? They'd be like this climbing, and then like that.
It must have been fun.
Yeah, and they're, that was with their hip helicopters. And then later, whatever, became buddies with the CO, with their commanding officer, and go over there and hang out, and the odd shot of rye, right?
What rank did you have in Bosnia?
I was a master corporal then.
So you're starting to get to like a leadership position.
So I was a 2IC of a section.
What's a section?
Like 10 guys, 10 people, yeah. But now 10 men or women.
What is included in a section? Like, what are the components of a section besides the 10 people?
You'll have 2 light machine gunners, and then 8 guys with C7s.
Do you have a medic?
No, like not within an infantry section. When I went over to Afghanistan, it was different. My section was built differently. You would just have 10 infantry troops, right? One would be the sergeant, one would be a master corporal. You'd have like a 3IC, a corporal, right? So if the sergeant was gone, the master corporal would be in charge, and then he would have his 2IC would be a corporal or something, right? We rolled around in an armored vehicle there, the AVGP. You'd have a driver and a gunner, and then the sergeant and the troops would all dismount, and it would just be the gunner and the driver left in the vehicle usually. That changed a bit in Afghanistan. They would have a 2IC left in the vehicle.
What was it like the day that you left Bosnia? Did you have to dump all your ammo again?
No, because somebody else was taking over from us. You had to make sure you had all the rounds. Maybe we were missing 2 or 3 rounds of 5.56, or, shit happens. You lose a round or 2 maybe. And that's it. And then we got on a plane, came home. I got home on a Sunday of 97 or 98, something like that. I saw my family, saw my mom and dad at the airport. I saw everybody else, and then it was like, see ya, we're going out drinking. So we went to the Sidetrack Cafe, like Yuck on a Sunday, because it was the only kind of bar that was open on a Sunday. Got hammered, and then went home, went back to my PMQ, personal military quarters or whatever, private military quarters, whatever it is. And at like 8 in the morning, my friend Paul Springer shows up and he wants to start drinking again. And I'm like, Paul, we both just came home from Bosnia yesterday. There was no liquor stores open yesterday, so how am I gonna have booze? Alls I have here is this moonshine that I brought back from Bosnia called Slivovitz. So at 9 in the morning, we poured a glass from this 40 that I had of moonshine. At 12 o'clock, my friend decided he was doing his laundry, and my other friend said, hey, let's go to the pub. And I went to the pub at like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, like wrecked, because I drank like a 40 of this moonshine. And just to say, I literally was blind drunk. In many parts, just to say, in many ways, I was a functioning alcoholic while I served. I got the job done, but I drank a lot. Yeah. I think a lot of my friends would be like, I'd go on a 3-week bender, and then they would be like, hey, let's go drinking tonight. And I'm like, where were you the last 3 weeks? Why, you couldn't come see me then? I said, okay, whatever. It was the whole mantra or the whole thing of work hard and play hard. I played hard, but I worked hard too.
What kind of qualifications did you get throughout your career? Can you list them all?
So a good example, say I did a mountain operations instructor course, an MOI. I did that course. It was 89 days long. It started at 5:30 in the morning with a run, like an airborne run. We would work all the way till supper, and then after supper, we reviewed everything from the day before, because then tomorrow we're getting tested on it, and if you fail it, you'll get a retest. If you fail that, you're gone. So from 6 till about 9 o'clock at night, we would review this stuff. Every day you're being tested on what you reviewed the night before and what you were just taught the day before that. 5:30 till 9 at night, every day.
Where was that course?
Every day, not one day off. We worked out of the forestry school in Hinton, Alberta.
What were some of the most difficult things you learned?
Well, you had to do like a 5-point equalizing anchor. You had to set up a 3-rope bridge. That's a tough one. Lowering casualties off the mountain face, making stretchers, doing a rope stretcher, doing a Stokes litter, and then being able to climb a mountain to a 5.5 or 5.6 degree. There's the different levels. 5.10 is like insanely hard, something I can't do, but a lot of people could.
How vertical is a 5.6?
Straight up. It's the amount of handholds that you have, footholds. You could have an overhang, you could have these things. And you did that. We did high alpine, so we went up, we did ice climbing, we did all that. The first week I failed one thing. I failed, I think, the 3-point equalizing anchor. I did a retest and I passed. That was the only thing I failed. After that, I drank every single night. I partied every night. At 9 o'clock when we're finished, I'd be stepping over all the guys, like practicing rope stretchers, doing this, doing that. As I run to the shower, get a quick shower, and we head straight down to the bar for $1 highballs at this Club de Bong in Hinton. And we would drink till 2:30 in the morning and go back, sleep for 3 hours, and go run. And I never failed another thing because I wasn't second guessing myself and then redoing it. Oh no, it's just right. I did it the way it came back to me, and every time I had it right. I passed it where half the course fails, so you might start with 30 people and 15 pass. That's for the advanced mountain ops or the mountain operations instructor course.
What year was that?
97, 98, or 96, 97. Other guys, people that couldn't kind of put up with the stress, maybe, they would second guess themselves. They would practice to fail.
Could you list all of the qualifications and courses that you got in your Army career and the years that you got them?
I did a machine gun course. I did a recce course. The failure rate wasn't that high or whatever. I did mine in the airborne regiment. You already got rid of the quitters, kind of, if you would. Some still showed up. No offense to that, but I mean, that's just the way it is. My first warrant officer that I had in the airborne regiment, Rui Amaral, he wrote a book. And the title of the book is called Eat Your Weakest Man, because you're only as strong as your weakest man. Yeah, so I did like an AVGP course. I did a driver wheeled course. Driver wheeled is all the vehicles with tires. And then a track course. I did an M113 course. I did the BV206 medium over snow vehicle. And then a snowmobile is called the LOSV, or light over snow vehicle. I didn't really do the course on that one. They just kind of took me out on a test drive, and Buddy wrote me off on the course, right? Because then I was going to go work in CQ store, so you needed all the vehicle courses. Did a mortar course, topped that course. That's the firing the 81 millimeter mortar. So you drop it down in the tube, shoots out.
You got to drop it just right? Like if you drop it too...
No, you just drop and you got to slide your hand, because if you drop it and your hand's still there when it comes out, you're losing your hand. So you got to, in one motion, drop the bomb down the tube.
What was it like the first time that you ever jumped out of a plane?
Well, you jump out and you people are screaming out, woo, right? Because everybody's all excited. They just jumped out of a plane. But you're in the Army, so shut your mouth. Shut up. They're yelling at you. Shut the fuck up, right? As people are like, yeah, right? Then after you come out, it's like, okay, I'm not making a noise anymore, right, Phoenix?
How did you feel?
Oh, like ecstatic. Thank God it opened. I don't know, things like that. I'm still alive, blah, blah, blah.
Did you feel like you found your life's purpose when you jumped out of a plane for the first time?
No, I wouldn't say the first time, no. Right, it was like, whatever, I got 5 more to go before I pass. Because it's all about passing. It's not about the experience. It's about winning.
You fell in love with it though, did you not?
Oh yeah, no, like doing the airborne thing and jumping right. You can start an exercise by taking a bus to the training area and getting out and grabbing your rucksack and walking off into the woods or whatever the fuck. Or you can ride over in an armored vehicle or something or whatever, right? That's how you can go there. Or you can jump out of a fucking plane at 1,000 feet with like an 80-pound rucksack, a 30-pound machine gun, and 50 pounds of parachute on your back. You're barely able to stand up, and you just waddle your way to the door and you fall out. You land, sometimes you land like you're a professional. Other times you land like you're a bag of shit, because you're dealing with wind gusts, non-steerable chutes. Well, really, I mean, you're pulling a slip, you're affecting it a little bit, you can affect your movement a little bit, but you're not, I'm going over here, I'm going over there. You're just going with the wind, right? So shit happens. You end up in places you don't want to end up. You can be like, Buddy, we were jumping into North Carolina, and Buddy thought he was going to land in the ocean because he jumped on the standby. So you're given You're given a standby. The light's still red, but you're given a standby. You throw your static line, and then you stand in the door and you wait, and you're looking at the light. And then they'll tell you, go. And when they say go, the light changes green, and you go. Buddy just came to the door and went out. So at 300 feet, he dropped his rucksack and his rifle. He released it off of his kit so he didn't drown, right? Because it'd drag you to the bottom. It landed in the water, and he landed on the beach. They had to send divers, try to find his rifle, right? Because it was attached to his rucksack at the bottom of the ocean.
Yeah, can't have that laying around.
Yeah, so who knows whether I'm not even sure if they found it. But that's what happens even by going 15 seconds early. You can end up over water where you should have been over land, because the plane is traveling at something like 70 meters a second.
In Canada, like, it's interesting to think about that everybody's got to do a little bit more of everything. You especially.
You have a lot more specialty courses, right? So it's not just one specialty course. You might have 3 or 4 or more. There's one guy named Glenn Ryan. The guy's probably qualified every course out there, like Pathfinder, Mountain Ops Instructor, Free Fall, Advanced Recce. That guy was like, had everything. And you look at a guy like that and it's like challenging yourself all the time, facing whatever, all the time. The possibility of failure, putting yourself in the line all the time, and always getting up and rising and winning. So I went to Afghanistan in July 2005 and returned like February 06. And I went over with the provincial reconstruction team. We had, so this is where we're talking earlier, say when I went to Bosnia, we had a section of 10 men, 10 people. We had nine people. We were made up of 6 infantry, so myself being the sergeant. The 2 IC was a master corporal. He was infantry, and then we had 4 other infantry members with us, so there were 6 of us. And then we had an engineer, we had a medic, and we had a signaler. So the lead vehicle and the rear vehicle both had turrets that we had a machine gun in. My vehicle had I had the 50 cal on the front, and then in the back we had a C6 machine gun, 7.62.
What was the average day
that
like?
Was manned by Lowen. Probably maybe 2 patrols a day. Might be in town, or you might do a long patrol outside of the city. There was times right during the election. They had an election then, and those days were like we were patrolling like constant, right? So you would come in off patrol, maybe you'd have 4 hours off, and then you'd be on another patrol.
And those were dangerous.
And then you were trying to sleep in one of those 4 hours, right?
Yeah, one of those 4 hours.
Right, because it'd be a 4 hours on patrol, maybe.
And you were responsible for your section, for your men.
Yeah, and it was very sketchy, right, to say. So during that time, the Afghans had set up checkpoints with guys manning them with machine guns, and they're not as trained as we are, right? So you might get a guy that didn't know, it's Canadian military or whatever, right? They would point their gun and kind of just go and point the gun at the vehicle.
Okay.
You know, me and the driver, we're safe because we're behind the level 3 armored windshield, say, right? That would withstand 7.62 round to the window or whatever, right? But the gunner at that time, I'm not sure if we had, even if we had the, he's sticking out, standing out, and every time we come up and they're pointing the gun up at us, he's the one that's right, kind of facing it. We would have parts where he was like, whoa, that was a close one, right? Because they were pretty edgy and
some cars would try to do the same thing with you.
Yeah, they would try to close with you. So say on my very first patrol, out the gate with my soldiers, right? So when I first got there, I went out the gate with the people that I was there to replace. So I went out with Americans on a patrol. They showed me how to do things, and then I went out on patrol with my guys. We were out doing our own thing. Very first patrol, being templated, being followed by 3 motorbikes, that then veered off, and a van came out. My gunner warned him. He didn't stop. He kept coming. He warned him again, and then
How does he warn him?
And then, well, one is point the gun, point your hand, point the gun, fire a warning shot, and then fire a shot into the vehicle. Well, he gave him the stop. He gave him
Point the gun?
hand signal, pointed the gun, and then fired a burst. And maybe that one fired the warning shot, and then it burst into the
Was he aiming for
the front of the van.
Okay.
So it was like a VW van, right, with the engine underneath, kind of kind of thing. And so my rear gunner, opened up on him. Then they radioed me and said, "Shots fired, go, go, go." And then I'm like, "What's going on? What's going on?" Right?
But you're there. You see it happening.
No, it's behind me.
Okay, all right, yeah.
So I'm the lead truck, lead Jeep, then there's the middle one, and then there's the gunner that opened up. So I'm not, they're telling me we're being followed. So we were being followed by the bikes, blah, blah, blah.
Followed by the van.
And then the van came out, and everything happens rather quickly, right? Warning shot, burst, done, right?
The burst to disable the vehicle. Is that the intention?
Yeah.
Just take at that point, you're destroying the vehicle.
The vehicle went off and into the ditch, right? And then we raced back to camp. They sent out Afghan National Police to the location that we just left, and the van was gone. So they already hauled it off, did all that, right? You have an incident in Afghanistan at, 10 o'clock in the morning, and then you're sitting down to have lunch or whatever, you're back to camp, having lunch, and then watching it come out on the news on CTV back in Canada.
Awesome.
Right?
Well, not awesome, but
No, but
surreal.
it was So it was kind of, it was very,
You were on the cover of a recruitment poster for the Canadian Armed Forces.
Yeah, so that was from that tour. We went out to an area that was like, the bad part of the country, bad area. It was out by the dam. There's a dam where I'm trying to remember the direction. Anyways, quite a ways out of Kandahar city.
Dangerous area.
Yeah, very, very bad country.
Dangerous area.
And we came, and two people that were manning, they had two kids that were like 13 years old manning a checkpoint in the middle of nowhere.
Wow.
With their AK-47s, like 13 years old. So I got a picture of that. That's on one of my
The Afghan National Police, or
no, like where I'm standing there with these two kids with AKs, and we're all having a cigarette.
The kids are like in the
13 years old, and they're like an Afghan. They're manning a checkpoint as Afghan National Police.
Wow.
So I was there with my major, and we were talking to them, and it's like, hey, you're not supposed to employ anybody under the age of for this, right? Mm-hmm. And like I said, this is like in the middle of,
And it was during that occasion that you got that picture taken that went on the recruitment.
Yeah, so then we went past there, we went on to where we were going. There was a guy on top of the mountain or on top of the hill looking down on us with I think binos and stuff. So I had my gunner pointing the machine gun up to let him know we know you're there, right? Watching you. Very much bad area. And then I went walking kind of across the ground, looking out over a certain area or whatever, checking something out, right? But the whole time kind of looking down at the ground, and when we did that patrol, I had members of combat camera with me.
Yeah.
So the guys with the Canadian Forces that go out and take all the pictures out, combat camera, right? So we were out in the field and they took those pictures. And then I seen that picture later. Before going to Afghanistan, I was working in recruiting. And I left recruiting, went back to battalion, went straight into a company to go overseas.
And who did you go with? 3PP CLI?
Yeah, B company. I went back. This guy, Danny Hitchcock, was like, man, you should come back to battalion. We're going overseas to Afghanistan. I was working at recruiting. I beat my release. So I was going back. So he's like, come back to B
What does that
company.
mean, beat your release?
they were going to release me because I got a broken scaphoid where the bone, I have a pin that holds the bone together here, but the bone never healed. So they were going to release me, and I said, no, I can still do this. I can still do that. So I managed to beat my...
You broke a lot of bones,
They were
man.
going to release me, and I broke my left side. I broke my femur.
We're going to get to that real
Got
quick.
an eye in there. But, yeah, so...
You went over.
When I went back to Canada, then one of the girls that I knew from recruiting, she's like, hey, you're on the recruiting poster. I'm like, I'm not on the recruiting poster. She's like, yeah, there's like a Navy guy and an Air Force lady or something. And I'm like,
and am I
no, man. I'm like, no, man. I'm not on no poster. I don't know what you're talking about, right? And then I went on my sergeant's course. So when I went to Afghanistan, I got assessed by my battalion commander, and he promoted me to sergeant without the course. Not acting, lacking, not anything. I was fully promoted to sergeant without the course. Then I had to go back and do it. So when I did the sergeant's course, I'm out there, and I walk in Gagetown in Oromocto, New Brunswick, and we go into the Canucks, the military kind of like clothing store or store with everything in it, and we come over, and my friend says kind of a derogatory comment about, hey, look at this clown on the t-shirt, kind of, right? And I'm like, hey, that's me. And it was like that picture of me in Afghanistan, and they had put a Canada flag behind it, and they were selling t-shirts
with you on it.
Yeah.
And that was at your sergeant course.
Mom. That was the only,
But the first time that was at the sergeant course.
Yeah, that I found out that I was.
Well, your friend in
recruiting.
recruiting.
Because my friend made a comment as we're standing in front of the t-shirt to say, look at that clown.
Your friend who's a lady.
No. This is my army buddy.
Oh, okay.
Who I was on course with. The lady already told me. She said, "You're on the poster." I said, "No."
You didn't believe
right?
it.
And then I seen this because I never did no photo op with a Navy guy or an Air
Yeah,
Force
exactly.
guy, right?
We just threw it together.
But yeah, they just joined the pictures and put it all together
Easier
on this
to do,
recruiting
anything.
poster that said, fight fear, fight chaos, fight distress, join the Canadian Forces. And it was a picture of me with the
Poster child.
an Air Force lady and Navy guy, or vice versa, or something. And because it was the combat camera guys, and they submitted the picture, and then I was on the recruiting poster for 2006, at the end of, middle of 2006.
Where did you spend most of your time in Afghanistan?
We were in Kandahar City. We were with the PRT, and we would go
Provincial Reconstruction Team.
Provincial Reconstruction Team, and we would go all over, over into Helmand Province. We would go south down to Spin Boldak and the Pakistan border. We might go towards towards Kabul. So we went all over the place, right? Trying to see what things that we could help with or whatever.
And what was your mission mainly when you're on these going around?
We were there to help rebuild and help kind of change Afghanistan or whatever,
Trying to.
See what do they need? What can we help? Can we help with this infrastructure and that?
And meanwhile, you're coming into contact with insurgents the whole time, like pretty frequently.
It was building up as we were there, right? There was suicide bombings. So in our PRT, we had 7 infantry sections that went out the gate.
Mm-hmm.
So
7 sergeants
times
teams.
9.
7 times 9 guys.
Yeah, that would go out the gate on a daily basis, right? Multiple times every day, blah, blah, blah. And out of those 7 sections, every section was hit by a suicide bomber except our section. So 6 were hit by suicide bombers or had members that were hurt that went out with another section. And mine was the only one that never.
Sorry to hear that. You know what? Since I don't want to go too deep into this because I can't imagine the burden of this and all the different complexities. But Is there a name that you'd really like people to know? Is there a person that you knew maybe in Afghanistan is there somebody's name who you'd like to mention? Right now?
Well, I mean, there's
so many. You do them all such justice.
No.
But you had, I think at one point you were telling me about a Gomez.
Yeah, so Francisco Gomez originally came from Colombia, joined the Canadian military, went to Somalia, went to Bosnia.
Did you know him in Somalia and Bosnia?
Yeah, I knew him in Somalia. We were in the airborne regiment.
So he's a longtime friend of yours.
Yeah, so I knew him from the airborne regiment. So we served there, both served there together 5 years, and then
Doesn't get closer than that.
you know, knew him, continued to know him, and he was killed in Afghanistan. Right?
Was it your tour or?
No, not on my tour. He was killed in 2006, along with Von Ingram, another guy that I served with, friends with. I just visited his daughter in Winnipeg 2 days ago.
You do a lot of this
Von
stuff.
Ingram's, yep. Right, so I went to visit her. Andrew Kellenboom, a medic, right? His parents, I met his parents. They started Boomer's legacy. Braun Woodfield was, he was killed in 2005 when I was there in Afghanistan. I went to where he was, right? Helped facilitate moving the vehicle back, the vehicle that they were in, and everything. And, there's 158 names of people that were lost in Afghanistan, for one. And then you think for everyone that was lost, there might have been 10 injured. In different firefights or in IED blasts and stuff like that. There's a lot of people that gave a lot, right?
You did too, man.
Yeah.
You don't have to be hit by a blast to give a lot.
Yeah.
The burden that you carry it really well. And that's one of the things that make you so spectacular, is the fact that you have went through this hell and high water, and you have given so much back. And I'd like to talk about that too. So we talked about Afghanistan, and there's a lot more that we can talk about with Afghanistan. There's always more to talk about.
Yeah.
But we kind of have to wrap up, because I want you to you're going to Petawawa tonight. So I want you to be able to get home. It's late.
I'm driving back to the hotel, back to Petawawa.
Your family, basically. You love the people over there at the
Quality
hotel.
Inn, hotel and suites in Petawawa.
They're very good to Mr. Mike Root.
Yeah, they're the best.
If you're in the area and you need a hotel, you know where to go.
Yeah. But I'm gonna go there tonight, and and they became friends, because when I got out of the military, when I sat at home, when I got out of the military, I was drinking to go to sleep, kind of, right? I kind of phased out of it a little bit towards as I was getting out, right? But being broken, looking out the window, just staring out the window after I got out, right? Sitting on the couch, staring out the window, not listening to music, not watching TV, not doing anything, just staring out the window. Me and the neighbor's dog across the street, right? And now, I started the tour. I started driving around to talk about Methloquin, is what happened, right? There was a lawsuit started against the government for us having taken Methloquin. So that lawsuit was started. I became an advocate on that lawsuit. Mine was filed in April of 2019. And then I started driving. But you can't sit there and talk about Methloquin the whole time, right? Nobody wants to hear it. Not everybody wants to hear it. So, I kind of would do this or that at the same time, trying to help veterans.
Tell me about the Portraits of Honor.
Richard Brown had brought me to see the Portraits of Honor in Cambridge, Ontario. At the time, Dave Sofa was still alive, but he was sick, and I got a tour of the portraits by his daughter, Terry Sofa, and then because it's about honoring and remembering our fallen, then I started to, hey, could I get a copy of the replica? Could I take that to this campground that I'm going to this weekend, right? That was the first time I took it out, was to there. Can I take it to this fundraiser for a dog for a veteran? And we set it up, and it's to remember the fallen. And then from there, I just started, hey, can I take it to, I want to take it to Edmonton, because the base gym will put it on display during Strong Contender, which is like the hockey it's a tournament in hockey, floor hockey, volleyball, swimming, whatever, between all the different bases in the country. The poles are 8 feet for the portraits of honor replica. So it fit in my truck, and I carried it with me. I took it to high school, to schools in Alberta. I took it to Legion in Saskatchewan. Took it to Legion in Nova Scotia.
How many places do you think you've taken it to?
Like probably 24 or more, right?
How many kilometers do you think you've done since you started the Rude Awakening tour, the driving?
So I'm at about 720,000 kilometers. I've driven in 6 years and a bit, 6.5 years.
How many dollars do you think you've helped raise for veterans?
Well, I don't know how much money I might have
I think
raised.
it's a good amount.
Some.
I think it's a good amount.
Some. But, you know, I've kind of grown a network that there's a lot of people watching out for me. And when they see me kind of falling or haven't posted anything, then people start making contact with me to see if I'm okay.
And you do the same for other people all the time. I see it. But I was with you once a few months ago when we went to the Pierre Poilievre rallies. We were traveling across Ontario a little bit, and the amount of people that you're in contact with is you're interconnected to that tight veteran.
And it's all across the country because they travel all across the country.
Yeah,
right?
I get to see those on your tour page. The grand go and follow the Rude Awakening tour so you can keep up with Mike on the road.
Yeah. So, like I said, 720,000 kilometers. I got a brand new truck 2 years ago. I've averaged probably like 10,500, 11,000 kilometers a month.
It's a beautiful truck.
Every month, and it's kind of right. It's a lot of kilometers when you're not really. I'm not doing a job. I'm not hauling this from here to there. I'm going to different veteran events throughout the country, like going to a snowmobile veterans ride in March in Newfoundland, going to a ride in Los Angeles, California to Washington, D.C. as part of the Run for the Wall.
You do that.
And riding for Vietnam veterans, right? So I've done a lot and going around, and I'm connected with a lot of groups.
I see.
You know, and a lot of people have helped me, and I've helped people as well. And
beautiful thing.
Right, it's yeah. So when I, just to say, back in December, I had a bit of a breakdown, had some issues, not getting paid, not getting money, and people came out and overnight they fixed me, right? Overnight.
Yeah.
People that watched me came together and helped me, right? So.
Well, when you give good, you get good.
Yeah. So that was very nice, right? And that allowed me to spend 6 weeks in a hotel in Petawawa and try to get reset, try to sort myself out, go to yoga, go to float therapy or whatever. Yeah.
What's the sound of remembrance?
So that's another one, right? So that, and everything kind of like so I had dropped off the Portraits of Honor to Kingston. It went into a museum, the Communications and Electronics Museum in Kingston. Fascinating place. They have an Enigma machine.
Oh,
right?
Wow.
That's worth
the trip alone.
Plus dollars, right?
Yeah, just to see that.
But so they had that, and then so last November they did the Sound of Remembrance, right? Remembering the fallen, coming together. Had two veteran singers, right? Graham True, Jason Price played, George Canyon played, right? And then 2 days after that, or the next day after that, they had a brunch and a breakfast, or a brunch, sorry, breakfast, brunch at Perkins in Ottawa, and then we all went to Beechwood Cemetery, and we went to see the fallen, kind of.
We went there once, me, you, and Chris, and saw the fallen from Afghanistan there, and like your friend Gomez is there, and a bunch of other people.
So we went there, and then that's where they gave me this guitar, which had the names of the fallen on it, and kind of like the Sound of Remembrance guitar. And then, it was kind of like an open check or a blank check or, a gift with no instructions, kind of. Mm-hmm. And then it kind of evolved into, taking it it was their idea to get it into the hands of Canadians and discuss stuff. Phoenix, it's all right. And then I just kind of went out and we got people to start playing it, right? So we had Daryl Powers from Great Big Sea play it. We've had Kevin Blackmore from Buddy What's His Name and the other fella play, right? Some Newfoundland legends, right? Played the guitar, right? And we filmed it and we did a video of it. And, you know, so one guy wrote a song about the guitar called Journey, and he's going to come to Ottawa, and the first time that he'll play the Sound of Remembrance guitar, the name that he gave it, he will come to Ottawa and sing that night, of which you will see.
Yeah, I think we're invited, me and Chris, to that.
Yeah.
Chris, come over here. Chris has been here the whole time, everybody, for this interview. He's behind the cameras, making sure the camera's not shutting off. There he is right there. It's Chris Stacey, Stacey Media.
Yeah.
We got some good things coming up. This has been a fantastic interview. One thing thanks so much for sitting down with me and doing this. Throughout this interview, we've heard a lot of barking. That's your two service dogs, Phoenix and Spark.
Yeah, so the one that's barking is not a service dog, and the one that's barking has got to learn, right?
Right, but she's going to be.
Yeah, so she came from Baden Canine, right? Spark came from Baden Canine. She's been with me for 8.5 years now, right? So,
come here.
And then she represents like my next 10 years,
Phoenix.
right? Phoenix. She's going to be trained up. They go to about, you know, the average is 9, like Spark's 9.5. So she came Baden Canine Center with me to then kind of see how we as a family work, right?
Yeah.
So we as a family don't live anywhere. We as a family go from house to house, friend to friend, stranger to stranger.
Second
right?
floor, elevated deck
deck in the woods.
In deck of the woods in Richmond or wherever it is, or Frank, whatever. Yeah. But so, you know, and we're always going into a strange home, or we're always meeting strange people.
Who are great people.
No, I don't mean it that way, but I mean, as a dog, the dog is they're meeting strangers every day. We're staying at a stranger's house every day. You know, we're going back to places that we regularly come to, but then others, we come into this town and they say, hey, you want a place to stay? Yeah, sure. Would love one, right? So, and then that's all we do. And then, so, you know, even to say it's not like a regular service dog and that, you know, she's constantly at work because we're never at the same place. She's always being, if you would, I'm constantly using my service dog.
Yeah.
Because we're constantly, you know, going from one place.
She's over. She's on the couch over there right now.
Right.
Yeah.
But
she's so calm. She's such a nice
so
influence.
she's even to say after
calming.
we left Newfoundland, she's changed a lot since we've been on the road, and then sees how everybody interacts.
Yes.
Say, even to say at the start, you know, like, you know, interacting with people, it slowly kind of opened up, and it's a lot, I don't know. She's more used to it, right? It's like, okay, I'll just go wait here while you're.
Yeah, I guess you both adapt to it a little bit, right? Like it's a bit of a change for her, and it's, I mean, this whole new life has been a change for you, I'm sure.
And Phoenix is learning the ropes. Like you said, she still has her training to do, and then she'll be a service dog one day.
Yeah. And say the reason I got her now then, as opposed to say when anything happens to Spark gets retired or something, but, you know, because with Spark, we've been around, we've been through a lot, right? I left the person I was living with a bag of dog food in a suitcase, and, you know, went to living nowhere, right? To being nomadic, and she's been everything to me, and I went to survive that wasn't for her. And now as I kind of see her getting older and worries, right? So they were kind of worried too, to say that if something happened to Spark, like before I had a replacement, before I had another dog, that well, and I said it, right, that I wouldn't have survived, that I would not, if Spark died, then I would die, right?
And I was going to ask you, my next question, my last one was going to be like, what's the value of a service dog to a veteran? And
Like
I think you just,
for her, right, the value is
your life.
invaluable,
priceless,
right? That my entire life revolves around her, and now that she's older, even to say that then I curb my bit of what I do a little bit less, or I like give her a break because she's older or whatever. But before I'd be like, yeah, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna go do this and I'll do whatever, and the dog's gonna come with me and the dog will have to do it because that's its job, right? And then now I'm like, nah, whatever, I don't need to do that no more. I don't need to go there, I don't have to do that, right? Like say go, I don't know, even say go hunting or go just other things, right? That, I don't need to go to a concert. I don't need to go, right? But whatever. But
She earned a break.
my happiest
She
moment.
earned a break for sure.
And so did you.
Yeah, both of you.
And
right.
to say that, the best times are the times that we're together anyways, right? And to say, my best part of the day would be in the morning waking up with them and in the evening going to bed with them, right? And trying to get Phoenix to stay in bed with us. But
Speaking of bedtime, it is super late, and you have a drive to Petawawa from Ottawa here.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Sergeant Retired Mike Rood, for your service
You're
to
welcome.
Canada, your dedication to our country and to your fellow veterans.
Yeah.
And you might not call yourself a hero, but I think a lot of people like myself do. Thank you, Mike Rood.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks, man.
And just to say, we're going to start a charity here shortly, and that information will come out later. We'll feed it through the news channels.
The appropriate news channels.
Yeah.
Well, we're both accredited by the
Yes,
Independent
we are.
Press Gallery of Canada, actually.
Yeah.
So
Onward and upward. for
thank you
everyone.
so much, Mr. Rood, Sergeant Retired Mike Rood, and have a safe drive home. Thank you, everyone, for watching. I hope you learned a lot. We could talk for years about
We
this
will have
stuff.
more conversations with Mike for sure.
Yeah.
158 on the names of all that fallen, sacrifice that